Hi, and welcome back to Tuesdays with Tuesday. I'm Tuesday, and I'm here to read to you today. I'm reading to you the next chapter of my book, Taste. This is book 1 in a 9-part series based in Filipino folklore. That is the Tearaway series, and today I'm reading to you chapter 13. I'm not sure if you're ready for it, but I sure am. Chapter 13, Awakening an Omen. Danny, phone the academy. Mason, secure the doors and make sure no one else is coming for her, Ezra commanded as he bolted into the foyer with Danny to handle whatever needed taken care of out there. Mason ran out of the room, leaving Vaughn and me to hold down Tonga as she bled out, still fighting with unsteady limbs. Vaughn eyed the thick blood with longing, biting his lower lip through the desire to shed his facade of humanity in front of me to become the beast he was. Well, do your thing, Lestat. You can drink non-human blood without transitioning, right? I said to Vaughn, motioning to the thick crimson pool that was toying with his stability. Vaughn shot me a grateful look and bent down over her torso, opening his mouth wide like he was about to chomp down on a salami sub. I winced at the sound, trying to imagine that he was biting into an apple and not a person. The gratuitous slurping as he stuck his mouth to her gushing wound and sucked like a nursing baby gave me the creeps. He let loose gluttonous noises that made me want to Ralph all over the place. I watched, my mouth twisted in disgust and horror as Vaughn pulled back, whining. For all this that she's got spilling all over the place, the only thing I smell is your blood. He licked his lips, fixated on my smaller injuries. Your young, healthy blood. Stop freaking me out! And FYI, it sounds pretty pervy when you say I'm young and healthy like that. My little gouges were nothing to Tonga's stab wound, but Vaughn eyed my arm with longing. I pointed my finger in his face and leveled my most no-nonsense stare at him. Don't you even think about it. I have a dog. She likes to read along. I tried to reason with the beautiful beast, knowing my threats would do precious little if he decided willpower wasn't as appealing as the turkey dinner I had swimming around in my veins. My voice changed to a softer pleading, as if talking down a jumper. You said my blood would get you closer to turning into a full vampire, right? That you don't want to only come out at night? That you don't want to live off humans? Vaughn nodded, looking pitifully at me. But I want it, he whispered. I leaned over Tonga and gingerly picked up his wrist, touched his finger to the sticky blood, and then lifted it to paint his lips with the crimson. Drink this. This is the feast that's on the menu, so knock yourself out. Vaughn gulped as he nodded, bowing down to indulge in his degradation, his lips suckling like a sweet baby as Tonga tried to fend him off with one of her weighted hands. Though I knew he was a monster, my heart did an upside-down ballerina spin for him, wishing I could do something to help, other than offer myself up. It seemed to be the equivalent of craving a filet mignon, but only being granted a Big Mac. After a few seconds, Vaughn contented himself with the endless supply of Big Macs. I softened when he reached across Tonga, gripping my wrist in desperation to keep himself centered. I could tell that he loathed himself as he drank, and though I understood precious little about the situation at hand, Vaughn needed me to stay with him, strangers though we were. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know how this looks. I wasn't always like this, he pled between slurps. My heart tugged in my chest at his self-loathing. That was an emotion I completely understood. Hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. Vaughn let out a whine of distress at his hand, pressed to the pantry door. The blood. I can still smell it. You tasted so fresh, ripe as a peach. I've been so good. This is torture. It'll be all right, Vaughn. Take a breather. I closed my eyes and tried to think of anything else to block out the sounds of Vaughn glugging blood. I generally wasn't a the sky is falling kind of girl, but I'd read enough Anne Rice to know a vampire when it licked the blood off a person. Vaughn lapped audibly, and I cringed. I didn't care for the sound of people sucking soup off their spoons, and it turns out I was even less endeared to the sound when Tonga's blood was the tomato soup. Mason came into the kitchen and knelt next to Tonga, watching her wan face as she struggled to breathe, He'd been gouged by her long nails on his bicep, and a trickle of red oozed out of him as he came down from the fight. The nurse in me wanted to treat it. I knew Vaughn wanted help in his own disgusting way. When Vaughn's gaze fell on me as he pulled up from his dinner, he forced a serene expression into place. He moved around Tonga and knelt next to me across from Mason, his one blue eye and one golden eye staring deep into my hazel to force about a calm neither of us felt. "I need you to try something," he whispered. Mason sat up straight, his head whipping to Vaughn. "Shouldn't Ezra be here for this?" I could hear Ezra and Danny's mumbled arguments coming from the living room area. "I thought you were here because you wanted things to change. You know Danny can't be the Reaper for 2 omens. If you really do love Danny, you'll see how bad that would be for him. And for Mary Ann, come to think of it." Mason checked to make sure Danny and Ezra were still in the other room. I got the feeling we were about to do something we weren't supposed to. "Do it quickly, then." Slowly, Vaughn reached for my wrist, giving me time to pull away. I considered it, but since he was gentle when he brought my hand to rest atop Tanga's chest, just to the left of the sticky wound, I allowed it for the mere reason that I was curious. He seemed to know what he was doing, while I was trying to catch up. His voice was quiet when he spoke to me, as if we were about to share in some grand secret. "If you're not an omen, nothing will happen, and I'll drive you home myself. If you are an omen, you need to be awakened. Reaping the life of a dying citizen of Tearaway is how that's done." I shot him a look of concern. "All I heard was blah, 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 you can go home after this." Vaughn smirked, ignoring the 2 men shouting in the next room. Danny and Ezra were really getting into it. "That's spot on." He brought the crown of my head to his chest, his fingers sifting through my disheveled ponytail as if he actually cared that this was massively confusing for me. "I just killed someone," I confessed, my guilt palpable. "I'm a nurse. My job is to heal people, not kill them." Vaughn shushed me. "Tonga had her own evil plans for you. Now close your eyes and concentrate. Can you feel something cold flowing through her skin?" No. Her body is still warm." "Keep searching. Find the thing that's cold and try to suck it into your skin. Like inhaling with your hand, yeah?" "Huh? I don't know how to do that." I wish I didn't have to be in a situation where I had to remind people that I was a real live person, not a vampire, unicorn, centaur, or whatever they were. Vaughn gripped my ponytail with his sticky wet hand, making me shudder. I wanted to run for the nearest shower. I let out a choked whimper that had just as much to do with the dying body as it did the blood and germs in my hair. I sucked in my impending tears when Vaughn's calm broke through my fear. "Listen, I know this makes no sense, but trust me. This is what you were born to do. Forget that it's impossible. Breathe with your hand. Find the cold and draw it into your palm. If you don't, Mason will just bring another Mambabare body in here for you to kill." I had too many words, but none of them were what I wanted to say. I kept my mouth shut and swallowed the bile that rose in me at touching Tonga's filthy robes while she struggled through her last breaths. I gripped Vaughn's bicep with my free hand, silently begging him not to leave when things were so confusing. I did my best to suspend reality and let my heartbeat flow through my hand like a breezy breath, in and a breath out. I willed myself to feel anything like what he'd described. I closed my eyes and concentrated, urging whatever cold was in Tonga to come into me. I could feel Mason and Vaughn silently begging me to hurry, to fulfill whatever box they needed to check before I could go home. Nothing happened at first, but after a few more seconds of ignoring Danny's shouts and Ezra's angry retorts coming in from the living room, I stumbled upon a small reprieve from the confusion. Huh. My fingers fumbled across her torso as I clutched for the chill. "I think I found it," I gasped, holding tight to Vaughn's arm with my free one. "Are Are you certain? It's happening? It's finally happening? Mason moved to my other side. His rough hand was on my shoulder as he watched the weirdness with wide, boyish eyes. Brilliant. Now drink it into your palm. Like, will it into your body. Okay? The slippery cold was like a slow-motion fish, twitching this way and that as it tried to squirm away from me. I tried to be gentle as I coaxed it with silent words, drawing it further into my hand. Come on, little buddy. The chilled fish tried to swim away, but my will was stronger, absorbing the cool until it filled my fingers and wrist. I did it! I pulled my hand from Tonga, grimacing at the amoebas that were no doubt skittering all over my skin. Mason gripped my shoulder. You actually did it! Suddenly I felt cold all over. My insides turned to ice, and I shivered at the painful sensation. Ow! I shouted, breaking our whispered exchange. Ow, 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 ow! Oh, something's wrong! Get it out of me! I yelled, grabbing Vaughn tighter as the ice began to feel like knives shooting into my belly and spine. My joints grew rigid, and I began to panic. Help! Mason and Vaughn moved my stiff body away from Tonga to a few feet from her, staring with trepidation and wonder. I was a popsicle, and I had 007 holding onto one of my arms and a Viking holding onto the other. So, I was pretty well freaking out. Vaughn was urgent now, his sweetness turning into a sharp command. Now put the cold into my hand. Like, release it into me. I can't, it's stuck. I started to sway, but Mason caught me and put his arm behind me so I could anchor myself using his shoulder. Do it. Give the soul to him. Mason cheered me on. I've never seen an omen awakened before. He let me lean into his burly side, which was warm when I was freezing. He held onto my free hand, squeezing gently to communicate solidarity. Vaughn, come closer. Focus, both of you. Danny and Ezra ran back into the kitchen, identical looks of horror and astonishment painting their faces as Vaughn took my trembling hand and pressed it to his cheek. No! Danny shouted, lunging for me with wide eyes. The invisible fish finally wriggled forward to the exit point without needing me to tell it to. I gasped when I felt it split into two, part of it ricocheting into Mason's hand that held onto mine, while the other half slid into Vaughn by way of his cheek. Mason and Vaughn fell away, writhing in choked agony as Danny tackled me to the floor, knocking the wind from my lungs. The cold had gone, so I was about 50-50 as far as pain versus elation. I felt lighter somehow, and the things that bothered me and taunted me slowly lifted like balloons being untied one by one so they could fly up and tap on the vaulted ceiling. My problems and fears seemed distant, as if there was a glass wall between me and my awful day. Even my OCD seemed placed on a shelf. The world looked different, though I had no idea how or why. No, give it here! Danny demanded from his perch atop me, searching my hands for signs of the phantom chill. When he didn't find it there, he felt all over my body, squeezing too roughly as he searched for the invisible fish. I struggled to catch my breath as I tried to sweep his hands off me, kicking and punching at random to fend him off. Before I could brace myself, Danny's sweaty lips crashed down on mine in the most confusing kiss of my life. Not that there were a ton to choose from. I screamed against him, my hands scrambling to extricate myself from the most unwelcome advance. He pulled away and called out in a mournful wail, "It's not here! Vaughn, no! What did you do?" Both Vaughn and Mason had fallen back and were clutching their chests like they'd just come in first and second place at a marathon. I sat up and socked Danny across the face. Using my brief window, I took my advantage and ran for the door, not caring what lay in wait for me out in the night. I bolted my car, ignoring that Terrence the Taurus was covered in a thick layer of bug sludge and was still in need of a spare. The goo was slick and clear with a brown tinge that made me gag, but it would take me home, so I swallowed my scream and clutched the slimy door handle with the sleeve of my ruined hoodie. A low voice I'd never heard before sent a chill up my spine. "I knew it was you." I looked up and saw a man covered from head to toe in mud, walking toward me from the other side of my car. It was the same man I'd almost hit last week, who'd been standing in the middle of the road with a wolf. He wasn't covered in worms this time, but he was no less forbidding. His black eyes gleamed with defiance in the glow of the porch light. While Tonga had looked beaten and bedraggled, this guy had an upright posture, and though he was covered in mud, he somehow struck me as more upper crust than her. A smear of mud obstructed part of the design of what looked like a geometric facial tattoo on his cheek. I was irate that I couldn't get away from these guys. "I've hit my limit with mud monsters today, dude. Get away from me." Ezra's voice was stern as he sidled up on my left. "She's our responsibility, Prince Langham. She's barely been awakened half a minute. You can report back to King Jian that we are in process. We'll handle any other soldiers he sends for her with the same final blow we've dealt Tonga. Any attack on her henceforth will be met with full force of tearaway. She is under my protection now." When Ezra's hand gripped my shoulder, I whirled on him with a swift left hook and an uppercut that felt right deep down in my soul. He'd tricked Bev, sure, but he'd hoodwinked me into thinking he was this great guy, too. I hated being wrong. "Handle your omen or I will," Prince Langham threatened Ezra, who was shocked that I had that much oomph in my punch. "Father sent me to retrieve her, but I'm on your side, Ezra. I know you can do more with her than Father can. Let me help you." Danny was on me from behind in the next second, and fear like none other lit me from the inside as I struggled to get him off me. I kicked my leg back to try to knock his shin, but despite his battle wounds, he was just plain stronger than me. Danny's bicep wrapped around my neck in a chokehold I was all too familiar with. I'd had to use it on a few patients who attacked me for various crazy reasons. I knew I had precious few seconds before I lost consciousness, so I made the most of them by plunging my elbow into Danny's stomach to try to dislodge myself from him. "Stop fighting me," he growled, jerking me away from my car. "Man, you're strong." His fingers dug into a nerve on my side, purposefully inflicting more pain so I would run out of air faster in the struggle. I hated fighting people who knew what they were doing. I let out a scream I prayed anyone would hear. I was seeing spots now. I reached up and tried to claw at Danny's eyes, but missed. He was so friggin' tall. Ezra's horrified face was shouting something at me, but I couldn't make it out. The muddy Prince Langham came into my blurred vision, his brown lips drawn in a tight line of disapproval at my fight. Then my world faded to black, and I lost all hope of finding my way home. That was chapter 13 of Taste. Thank you for reading it with me. I feel so sad for October and for Vaughn. I don't know. I'm a bleeding heart about that kind of thing. I don't feel so bad for Mason right now, but I'm sure I will later. I haven't actually read this book since it was published. It has been a very long time. No, I want to say I listened to it once when the audiobook was being recorded, but that was still years ago. So it has been a long time since I have been familiar with this story, and it's kind of nice to go back and revisit stories that were very important to me and still really are. If you're interested in reading ahead, you can get the ebook for free right now on most major ebook retailers. It is available in paperback and hardcover. Obviously, this is the hardcover. Look at how pretty. And it is also available as an audiobook, not read by me, read by an actual professional, so you might enjoy it a little bit more. So you can check those out at your leisure, or you can wait till next week and I'll read you the next chapter of Taste on Tuesdays with Tuesday. Thanks so much. See you next week.